Well, shalom. My name is Daniel John Lee, and this is episode 9 of my podcast. And this is my midweek podcast. And I just want to make it a kind of a short teaching on the chapter of Exodus, chapter 16. So you may want to grab your Bible and open up your Bible and read Exodus chapter 16, just to kind of familiarize yourself with the chapter so you'll know what I'm talking about. In Exodus chapter 16, the Israelites have just entered into the wilderness, and they've just left Egypt, and Yahweh has just done an amazing deliverance for them. And this is when Yahweh first gives the children of Israel first gives them the manna, the gift of manna. And He provides this manna every day with the dew of the morning. He commands them to gather this manna and to not hold any till the next day. Of course, some of the Israelites decide to rebel, and they don't obey Moses. And so, when they wake up the next day, they discover that the manna that they decided to rebelliously keep is stinking and has a bunch of worms. What I think is interesting is that I think that it's very obvious that the whole lesson of the manna and gathering the manna each day and having to only gather as much as you can possibly eat and then not leaving any until the next day because you have to go out and regather it is a really good picture of how Yahweh wants us to be daily dependent upon Him. That we're not supposed to try to hoard things for ourselves. We're not supposed to try to plan out everything, but we're supposed to be daily dependent upon Him each and every day. Trusting in Him for our provision, which the manna, of course, is what actually fed the children of Israel while they were in the wilderness. What's also interesting is that if you read a little further down through chapter 16, he then talks about Shabbat, and he says that on preparation day, the 6th day of the week, the day before Sabbath, you're supposed to go out and gather a double portion, so that you don't have to go out on Shabbat to gather manna. And of course, the Israelites once again rebelled, and when they tried to go out on Shabbat to gather manna, there was no manna to be found. I think it's very interesting that the lesson of being dependent upon Yahweh and totally relying on Him for our daily provision is directly connected to keeping the Sabbath day. There's a story that I talk about in my book, Love Never Fails, which some of you who've read that book may be familiar with. But for those of you who have not read the book, I'm just going to briefly mention it. And that is, when I was working at the Oregonian several years ago, I was required to work at least one Saturday each month to sell the newspaper. It was the highest sales day, Saturdays. And if you did not work at least one Saturday a month, then you could not be employed there. Well, after several months of being convicted that I needed to keep the Shabbat, I finally had the guts to go up to my boss and say, look, I can no longer work on Sabbath. It's the Shabbat. It's a day of rest, and I can't violate the Shabbat anymore. So if you fire me, you fire me, but I cannot work on Saturdays anymore. And my boss said, well, you're a good worker, and I'm going to go ahead and let you continue to work here, and you don't have to work on Saturdays anymore. So that was me basically trusting in Yah for my provision while also honoring the Sabbath day. And, I could have very easily lost my job. And I know that if I had lost my job, Yahweh would have provided. He would have given me something even better. But what happened was as I began to work without working on Saturdays, I became one of the top salesmen in the sales room. And again, since Saturday was the top sales day for most people, not working on Saturdays, it was a miracle that I was still one of the top salesmen, yet I was consistently in the top 5. On the sales team at the Oregonian, even though I wasn't working on Saturdays. So I want to encourage everyone that if you're not keeping the Sabbath day, which is from Friday at sunset until Saturday at sunset, please do so. It is a commandment that you need to obey. It's for your benefit, and Yahweh will bless you. And that keeping the Sabbath day and not working from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown is not only for your benefit, but it's directly tied to keeping yourself completely and totally dependent upon Him. And that's the lesson we learned in Exodus chapter 16, that by every day depending on Yahweh for the manna, the Israelites were able to survive on a daily basis, and also it was tied directly to keeping the Sabbath, keeping the Shabbat. Because keeping the Sabbath is a time when we decide not to do any work, even though a lot of the world does decide to do work on Saturday. We decide not to do any work on that day, and we trust in Yah that He's going to give us a double portion on preparation day, and He's going to provide for all our needs, even though we're taking a whole day not to work, and instead to honor Him. So I just want to remind everyone out there that if you're not keeping the Sabbath day, the Shabbat, from Friday evening to Saturday evening, which means no buying or selling, no working, resting, relaxing, feasting, enjoying your time with friends and family, worshiping and praising Him, getting into the Word, that you should do that. It's a commandment that we all need to obey, and it brings much, much blessing. And it strengthens our dependence upon Him and upon loving Him. So, like I said, this podcast is a very short one. I hope this little lesson blessed you. It's something that, I don't know, I just felt Yahweh was telling me to share. It was something that I heard from Him as I was reading the Scriptures, reading through the Torah in jail. And so I hope that this podcast blesses you. Shalom, and Yahweh bless.